lines I write, I keep it live cause I thrive. I might just blow your mind tonight. I'm so hyped, but it's no hype. From this height, it's direct hits on sight. I'm your type, lend me your ears to show you that there's something in me. I'm not giving up, I'm standing right here, holding these days hostage. And I'll make this my year. We turning fear into love, and the love's in the air. I love doing this cause nothing compares. Nothing can share that same type of feeling when you feeling them flares. They can't catch it, it's havoc. I rip to a tear, switch a scenario. My stereos, I leave them impaired. Variables start to change and they're all in my range. I just gotta grab it, it's all mathematics. Every step is drastic, I make it fantastic. I'm trying to take your breath away. Asthmatic.
This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo.
Yeah, just nod your head with it, so explicit and vivid. Every image is intricate, intimate. I put my all into it, no scrimmage and no rules. I'm a pro tool, hear my heartbeat, beat into the vocals. I'm so loco, lost my mind, oh no. It's ponderoso, dope, so no overdose, cause it's dope, yo. Man, this is house grown, mixed with some milestones. So I let the style flow down like the Dow Jones, bringing it with some foul tones, letting the crowd know we getting loud, so it's eardrum rudiments. Yeah, we bring it rude again. Move, little hooligan. Music for tuning in, full time to the 10. I'm on my clock like I told you. I'm doing this for dreams we pursuing.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anti-Media Radio Show. Once again with your host, Nick Bernabe, here on ucy.tv and the antimedia.org/radio. Oh man, super happy to be back. Monday morning, always a bunch of news and stuff going on. Long weekend. Hopefully everybody enjoyed the football and all that stuff. I know it's hugely popular here. I watched a couple of the games, and I mean, I gotta say, it was a kind of a boring weekend, wasn't it, DB? Compared to like normally the playoffs, it's like, oh shit, this is gonna be some entertaining stuff. It was a little boring.
I don't know, man. I played in college, and I didn't watch a game all year this year. So I don't know, man. I guess the stuff surrounding the sports killed the sport, or the professional aspect of the sport for me. I mean, college is just a lot. Even college is getting destroyed now, but at least it's more pure.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so many people to please nowadays. When you get
It's like 2009 when they started the whole propaganda aspect, where they started getting paid by the U.S. Department of Defense. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, is there nothing sacred left? You know what I mean? It's like, why is everything getting tainted by propaganda and stuff?
I mean, does the military really want football fans in the ranks?
I think so, man. I think so.
I don't think a lot of them can make boot camp.
Yeah. They can talk about how it'd be cool if they did, though.
I mean, I couldn't make it through boot camp, and I look around me at some of the games I've been doing. I'm like, wow, I'm in shape.
Oh man, dude, that's funny. Anyway, there's just a lot of stuff going on that we're going to be talking about today. Let's get some initial stuff out of the way. I mean, this hilarious thing with the fake news propaganda. Of course, we've been talking about this for a couple weeks now. So a piece comes out today on Washington Post, and I was hoping Jake would be on tonight to talk about this.
Nick, should we get the TMZ aspect of the night of last night out of the way, though? I mean,
yeah,
they're using as the massive distraction. Just knock it out first.
Yeah, we'll get that right now. I just want to first let me get this Washington Post thing out of the way. But they're like pulling back on this idea about pushing this narrative of fake news now, because this whole idea behind fake news, it's so hard to define, and really there are only just a couple of crappy websites that push this stuff. It's not nearly like the big epidemic that they have try to make it out to be. And so now, Washington Post came out with an article today saying, okay, well, maybe we should stop with this fake news stuff. It's just made the problem worse because now it's another of these things that backfires. I mean, these guys, I swear they have very poor strategists or whatever because, it goes back to the same kind of mistake that Hillary Clinton made in the primaries where it was like, okay, let's hedge our bets and let's try to get Donald Trump to run against us so that we could beat him easy. And it backfired, right? And so now we're also seeing where these mainstream outlets were pushing this narrative about, oh, well, fake news is the big threat here. This is the big problem that we're facing, in 2016, at the end of 2016. It's like fake news is the big issue that we need to really be worried about, guys. And now they're like, okay, sorry, hold on, let's rethink that because now everyone's calling us fake news, and Washington Post is being called fake news, and New York Times is being called fake news, and so now nobody knows what's real and what's fake, and so the problem has only made the situation worse for the Washington Post because they were already dealing with trust issues, right? Like people have a hard time trusting the mainstream media now. And, as we covered on the anti-media earlier today, CNN is like the least trusted one on TV anyway. So this whole narrative of fake news, it seems like maybe it's actually eroding the credibility of the mainstream media, like even more than it already had been. So now they're like trying to roll back on this because it's like, okay, maybe we made a mistake. Maybe it shouldn't have been fake news. We should have come up with a different boogeyman or a different way of communicating this.
They don't know what to do, Nick. Like, these are archaic institutions with people that run them that came up in the ranks of the universities pre-computer, and they cannot adjust. There's possibly no way they can adapt, but they're not going to give up these high-paying jobs. These boards aren't going to give up their positions. What they're going to do is they're not going to go quietly into the night like the dinosaur and a meteor hit. They're going to stick around like the troglodytes they are and eke out an existence and be a thorn in the side of the truth, which is really sad. I mean, I'm still seeing people that I do or had highly respected parroting WAPO, parroting New York Times, parroting literally any MSM, and you can pick a hole in anything they try to sell as a narrative because it's the selling of a narrative. It's not the presenting of facts anymore with some op-ed analysis. Their narrative is now the truth, and it was never like that before.
Yeah, man, and it's really pushed people into a corner, and it's I see people sharing like really, really crappy fake articles, on a regular basis. And now keep in mind I'm like a news sleuth, and all I do all day is look at news and read and figure out what's going on and look at the trends and all this stuff happening. So, of course, I'm going to run across some of these bad links in my newsfeed all the time, but most of the time, there's people in the comments that are saying, hey, dude, this is a bad link, or the story is not trustworthy. And, I found myself in that position just earlier today where I saw a guy posting some fake news, and I was the first one in the comments to say, hey, dude, like, this site is bunk. And, of course, it was yournewswire.com, which is a completely crappy site that literally posts like 85% fiction, and they mix like 15% facts in with it, and like they'll even hyperlink to like legitimate websites and stuff, but they just take everything out of context, and it's like completely fictional. But what I've noticed is that people tend to get like a little defensive about it too, and it's like, well, it's not fake, and it's because of this and because of it's like, well, it's still a bad link. And it's the same thing on the other side of the spectrum when it's someone posting some like propaganda on Washington Post or New York Times that is just pushing the military-industrial complex talking points of, hey, we need to have a new Cold War to build up against Russia, even though they're, not really trying to threaten us. It's the same thing, and you call people out on that stuff, and they get defensive. You know what I mean? Because people are so like...
It's all they know, Nick.
Yeah, nowadays people are so fragile, I guess, and so like beholden to their own beliefs that they actually get like, just by challenging somebody's, article or facts or idea, they feel people tend to get like boxed into a corner and they get super defensive super quick. And that sucks because that is not the way that we're going to have any kind of like legitimate conversations in the near future. If everyone's getting offended by somebody countering their argument with a different argument, even if it is countered with facts, like shutting down debates by getting offended or getting defensive about stuff, like this is how, this is just going to lead us further down the path of polarization and divided.
Well, yeah. It's ironic because a lot of the liberal people on the liberal side, or what I would call now at this point the alt left, since they're as just insane as the Tea Party is on their own side, they've created an atmosphere where is a middle ground ever met for this next 4 years? These next 4 years are going to happen, and if they don't happen, it'll be even worse. If something happens where Trump doesn't get the presidency, like somebody is stupid enough to try to off him, or there is something dumb like, I don't know, like maybe an insurrection is tried at the inauguration and we have a true civil conflict, aka a Civil War 2.0, that's even worse. So we have to come to there's going to have to be a time when we can come together, man. I mean, I've been out of California a couple years now, and I can tell you the people out here look at the West Coast as a completely different country, especially with the Cal exit talk after this election. Now, do they all want Trump? No. Rubio won in Minnesota. And then Bernie won here, who I was big for because he seemed the most sane. But what I'm trying to say, man, is we're massively polarized, almost in quadrants. The North, the New England, the South, and then the West Coast could all be their own countries. Yeah, there's enough here to keep us together. But I mean, honestly, if we fall for this divisionary stuff, it's not going to last much longer. I mean, Cal exit would absolutely gut the U.S. economy. I don't understand why people think it'd be something we could just do. I mean, you'd actually probably create a potential for a war at some point, a war between California or Pacifica and the U.S. I mean, could you imagine that?
California was a split apart from the rest of the United States. It would become it would be the third superpower. I mean, California has more economy than Russia does. You know what I'm saying? Like, California's got a bigger economy than Russia.
The fact that people take that idea seriously, which I know we talked about that 5-6 years ago. Wouldn't it be funny? California at that point was the 20th largest economy. Now, what is it, Nick? The 6th? I mean, we're talking about a single state. So ideologically, you share with Oregon and you share with Washington, you share with Las Vegas. That becomes Pacifica, and it becomes a rich man's wet dream. I don't think that the people that are working class understand what a super state of that nature would do. It would literally boot them out overnight from economic necessity.
Yeah. Crazy times, man. But, it brings up a good point. And I think one of the problems with what makes people mad and pissed off, and let's face it, like the United States is a bunch of people right now that are a bunch of pissed off people walking around, not exactly sure what to do with themselves. What makes people really mad, it's like people don't hate each other just for being a liberal or just for being a Democrat or a Republican or a conservative. They don't hate each other just because. I think what really makes these two separate groups, and now keep in mind that the majority of people fall outside of those two groups. Like, most people are not liberals or Republicans. Like, the majority fall far outside of those lines. In fact, I mean, there was like 200 million people that didn't vote in the 2016 election. That's like 2/3 of the country. Now, of course, that includes people that have either lost their voting rights, which would be, felons, people that have been prisoners, people that are in prison right now. Also includes people younger than 18. And that to me is like the biggest conspiracy. Why do the kids have absolutely no say in this at all? I mean, I guess that's a whole other discussion. But, 200 million people did not participate in the 2016 election. And so we can't classify the United States as like half Republican and half Democrat. There's just no way in hell that that makes sense. The mainstream media does that all the time and pretends that those are the only two things that exist, but that's not the case. Most people are not within those two.
The vast majority of people, Nick, are socially liberal and fiscally conservative. It's not rocket science. Do whatever the hell you want. Don't hurt other people, and then don't make the government pay for a bunch of crap. Like, keep the taxes as low as possible so that people can make more money and spend it on what they want. It's so simple. And yet we honestly, we just go crying to these people constantly about everything. And that creates the military-industrial complex. The military-industrial complex is there by our consent because we want certain things and we're willing to actually let people kill to get those things. And at some point, we've got to stop that, man. Part of it's what we harp on all the time, which is energy independence. But the other thing is, like, honestly, do we need a new car every 3 years? Do we need a new house ever? Once you buy one house, aren't you good? I mean, do you need another new construction to be built? I mean, we're at a point now where one U.S. consumes 1.5 Earths by itself. How long can that last? 30 years, 40 years? I don't know. Just what I'm saying is, man, the stuff that's been going on is a cycle that's been allowed to perpetuate. That's where we're at now. Liberals on the left shaking their heads wondering why the hell Trump got elected. Because somebody like Clinton could be an option for you. That's why.
Yeah, dude, that's a good way of putting it. And, you know, what I think pisses people off is that one group gets to decide for the other group. And this is, you can't put it any more plain, especially to the people, let's say the people on the left, that are not okay with this idea of Trump building his huge golden wall, the Great Wall of Trump, on the southern border. Now, as we just found out in the last several days, and as we published a story on this on Saturday, I believe it was, on the anti-media, is that, you know, Trump is not going to have Mexico pay for his wall, at least not up front, and the taxpayers are actually going to be financing this thing. So it goes to this idea to where if I was a liberal who was against Donald Trump's wall, now keep in mind, I'm not a liberal, but I am against Donald Trump's wall. I'm going to have to pay for Donald Trump's wall. And this is the kind of thing that people get pissed off about. And this is why we're dealing with such a polarized political landscape, is that we have basically this idea, and of course it's part of the democratic process, and of course the argument that we can make is that the U.S. is not democratic, which, you know, is for the most part the case. But the issue is that whoever wins the election can force everybody else to do stuff. And so that's exactly what's going on with Trump and his wall. No matter how many people don't support this wall, and look, Trump got like 60 million people to vote for him only. 60 million out of like 330 million. That's a fraction of the population. I mean, that's a small part of it. But those 60 million people are now forcing everybody else in the country to pay for Trump's wall. That's why people are so pissed off right now. And that's why the country is so divided. Again, it goes to this point where we've got too big of a country with too many people and too many different diverse views to have one person or party to preside over all of it and tell everybody else what to do. It just does not make any sense anymore at all.
And I was just going to say, it's inevitably going to fail, because now what we're seeing now with this failed repeal of Obamacare is they created this monstrosity that there's nothing that can replace it. And once Trump builds the wall, there's no going back to a normal relationship with Mexico ever again. And that will run through generation to generation. Is it going to make us more safe or less safe? Well, it could be argued that we could probably create a wall right now with drones, and this wall is going to be largely symbolic. And what it's going to do is create resentment. and make us less safe. And any physical security we're going to gain by this, if ever there were a time when people would mass in droves at the wall, they would, trust me, there's enough construction workers in Mexico, they'll demo the shit out of that.
Yeah, dude. I mean, that's one of the things that people don't want to talk about with national security. The only way to achieve national security isn't through bombing people. You know what I mean? I mean, the biggest problem, and that's why every single politician that tells you that they're going to fight terrorism is lying if they're not telling you that we're going to start ending wars and stop, bring the troops home. At some point we have to start asking ourselves what creates national security risks. And
our policy, Nick, we're run by psychopaths.
As you said, we got to stop. Like, if we want to have national security without having a massive police state where there's checkpoints on every block and a huge ass wall and barbed wire everywhere. I mean, there's already countries that have that. I mean, there's plenty of countries that are trying out that model. And I'll tell you what, I've been to some of them and they suck. You don't want to go.
You know, when we were at our peak, Nick, was right after Teddy Roosevelt passed. And we had a massive gunboat navy that was untouched. We were the new British Empire. Yet it hadn't occurred at that point to the bankers that war was profitable. And what we were was, in fact, the biggest defensive empire the world had ever seen. We were impregnable. And our people enjoyed the highest quality of life in the world that was never seen until Japan in the 80s. Where you could go to a doctor for $5. You could go to college for $2,500 and get a doctorate. I mean, stuff like that. You could buy a house for $1,500 and you made $2,000 a year. And that was reality, man. That was real purchase power, because the U.S. has like $45 trillion in natural resources still left that we haven't even pulled out of the ground or cut down or extracted yet. $45 trillion could pay for all of us to have like an amazing life forever for like 4 or 5 or 6 generations to come, not even taking into account new technology that's probably going to make everything recyclable and better anyway. So like it's a joke, dude. We should use our military to make ourselves untouchable, pull back. We have enough resources here. If we focused on education to extract and use them, we would dominate economically like Japan was for a long time. It would be like a new renaissance.
Oh, yeah, dude. I mean, but then we would have to be more realistic. And for that to happen, the wealth would have to spread around. Because in the current model, these guys can like make pyramid schemes and they, get to make a bunch of money and have a bunch of power. And they get to do the thing and kind of carve the world in their image. At least they try to.
Yeah, but then if it was so great to run third world countries, not all those dudes would relocate to Europe and the U.S. So all these oligarchs are short-sighted idiots because they're going to rule over a shit heap.
Exactly. Let's get into some. We got to cover a little bit of ground here because we're gonna have a special guest on the show in a few minutes. DB, let's go back to what you wanted to talk about initially here.
Just the hypocrisy.
Golden Globe, whatever.
Yeah. Just get it out, get it out of the way because it should be killed after one day. And it should be just, listen, there's things about a lot of people that I respect and admire. And everybody knows Meryl Streep's basically at the top of the heap as far as Holly Weird goes and all those people that entertain us. Literally, that's all they do. They're mannequins on a screen. Even if you meet them in real life, and I've met some of them, they're totally not normal. They're really not. And you can't hold a normal conversation with them. They're beside themselves, so to speak. So just, think of them as automatons or CGI at this point. In 5 or 10 years, human actors probably are going to start getting phased out anyway because they're too expensive. So these people have this last shining moment in what they consider their sun, and they're going to go back into the shadows. And just don't let celebrities. The main thing to bring out of this is don't let talking head celebrities, unless it's somebody that you know is like very versed politically and ideologically is pretty infallible, and you can't really pick apart their ethics and morals. Why do you care what they say? Like, does it really matter what Meryl Streep says? Does it matter what any of these people say at all? Like, even like a guy like Lee Camp, who's hilarious, like he's a comedian, like take everything with a grain of salt, unless it's somebody that's, got an advanced level of accomplishment, expanding ideological thought. Otherwise, what are you really parroting besides the normative thing, which is what Streep did. She spoke to an audience that were, except for a few people in the crowd, complete sycophants for the DNC.
Exactly, man. It's a bunch of these, and this is what I was saying a couple of weeks ago too. It's like, at what point do we get to the point where these people are like literally just talking to themselves, the same goes for like the Washington Post and for New York Times and for a lot of these other mainstream media outlets. Like, it seems like what they're saying is just they're saying stuff to themselves, to their own like inner circles of like extremely elite kind of people, and it no longer connects with just the regular people who are just tired of everything basically at this point. As much as we slam Trump on a regular basis on this show, I mean, the fact of the matter is he won the election by connecting with regular people who feel like they've been forgotten by the political establishment. Now, Trump is going to be a big letdown for all of those people, because that's what politicians do. And, as we said it with the wall thing, he promised everybody that voted for him they were going to get their wall built by Mexico or paid for by Mexico. And now, no, you guys are paying for it, actually. Sorry. It's a big letdown. And the problem is with these kind of celebrity talking heads, and even like the political pundits and all these people that just regurgitate talking points from either the Democrats or the Republicans, is they're not expanding, like you said, they're not expanding the philosophical argument. They're reinforcing bullshit that we've already heard. That's all they're doing. And this is another one of the big problems that we're having here in the US, is that our political debate has been limited by the fact that there's only two political parties that get any kind of attention by the corporate media. There's only two political parties that get into the presidential debates, and by default, that has limited the amount of conversation and debate that we could even have in this country about the state of affairs. And that's how we going back. This is how we ended up with Trump, because they're not allowing any other voices into the debates. It's like we can't even talk about alternatives. Like, let's say a more libertarian solution to the issues, or a more progressive solution to the issues, going towards maybe in a direction of Rand Paul, or maybe into a direction of Bernie Sanders. Like, those ideas, as we witnessed in the primaries, those ideas are pushed out to the fringe and acted as if they're unrealistic. When all they're really doing, all these pundits are really doing, is self-serving themselves and telling everybody, oh no, that just isn't going to work. We can build, $3 trillion military projects, but spending on those stuff is just out of the question.
Those fringes are like, when you combined them, are really what a lot of Americans see. I mean, like using Rand Paul, and especially his father, as a great example for being a libertarians, whereas, law enforcement in their mind, in my mind, should be at a station until called. And maybe there can be surveillance cameras in high crime areas. They can respond to those autonomously on their own. But as far as patrol goes, that's just money laundering. Basically at this point, anything enforcing things to create a buck for the state or the city or the Fed is just an extortion scheme. And most people are in that agreement. However, to go against that, of course, is to bring violence to the state upon you. And at this point, that's essentially fatal. So nobody who's stupid, who's not stupid or insane, goes against the government more than they can. But they would if they could, and if we all decided together that's just a bunch of bullshit, then it would end. And I guess maybe we have to wait for certain generations to expire. I don't know. But on the other end of the spectrum, you know, like if we're going to have a Fed, then what Bernie was saying to do with the money they continue to take from you at the force of a gun should at least more or less be filtered down to the people for education and healthcare at a minimum. At least take 20, 30, 40% of the military budget and filter that down to the people so they can at least get the college if they got the good grades. They don't go broke if they get surgery. And for God's sake, like a house should really not cost what it costs now. And before, what the government did was subsidize manufacturing and production of housing. Now what they do is they just do Section 8. That way they can keep you on a leash. No one wants that. We should have houses that cost like half as much as they do now. And all those things could get rolled back. This is like pre-World War I stuff we should go back to.
Yeah, dude. I mean, there's a lot of ideas that can be talked about and tried and brought into the debate. But, you know, the issue is that most of these people don't carry any kind of principle. And this is exactly what we were seeing with Meryl Streep. We have an article up on the Anti-Media by Carrie, who kind of points out the hypocrisy because, you know, like it was just covered a couple days ago. We talked about how in 2016, the U.S. dropped 26,000 bombs on other countries in 1 year, in 2016. Of course, you know, this is the Nobel Peace Prize winning Barack Obama's administration. And for some reason, people like Meryl Streep and others, there's no denying that, you know, Hollywood is dominated by these type of, you know, liberal kind of high-horsed, you know, people who only see life or reality through a certain lens. But the issue with Meryl Streep talking about how violence incites violence, without her speaking out against the current violence going on for the last 8 years with Obama, without all of Hollywood also saying, dude, like Obama, we got to stop you from doing these horrible wars. You said you were going to end the war in Afghanistan. You haven't. You said you were going to end the war in Iraq. You sent guys back in to fight. You said you weren't going to be bombing all these countries. You bombed like way more countries than George Bush did. Like, where is Hollywood to put these guys in check? Like, I would be all for Meryl Streep coming out and standing up against Donald Trump. But the problem is that they don't do it principle. They only do it when it's convenient for them.
Their silence is so deafening and so incriminating, dude. I mean, it really is. It was so creepy when they did the rewind from 2003, where they all did the standing ovation for Roman Polanski, who, if you want to do any background checking, he had to flee the country and he can't get extradited. I guess now he's in Switzerland for, you know, it was more than statutory rape. If you really want to read into it, the guy's a sicko. All right. So these elites at the top, man, they cover for each other because they're into some really weird, messed up stuff. They're going to back each other up to the end until whatever comes out, if it does. And I hope to God it does with Trump. And, you know, all you can say about these people is you got to look at all of them differently. I mean, I'm starting to look at guys like who were icons growing up, like Will Smith. He's starting to look way different to me. Like, these people in real life, not on the screen, are seriously weird people, and not in a good way.
Yeah, dude, and you know, the recent video I saw was it was like a celebrity farewell address to Obama, and it's just like dozens of celebrities saying how much they're gonna miss you, and oh my gosh, Obama, you were so awesome, and you were so great.
It's creepy, dude.
And it's like dozens and dozens of celebrities like dedicating a video to Obama saying goodbye and we loved you and we're gonna miss you. It's like I get
No
it.
other president ever got that fanfare, and not even JFK. I mean, at his funeral had that many celebrities basically, providing him the lip service. I mean, this is it goes beyond, man. It opens up a whole can of worms, dude, and it's creepy ass stuff, man. If you ask me, I don't know. What do you think of that same way, Nick? I mean, these people are all connected at a different level.
Well, I mean, I haven't really looked at it like that, but it's just, to me, it just seems like, Obama's a cool president, and he's a likable guy, and he's funny, and he's, conversational and stuff like that. But underneath all of the kind of socially cool stuff he did, he's been good on gay marriage. He's been good on like several social issues, which, like you said, the majority of the country agree. The majority of people in the United States are socially liberal people. So that's why Obama is so well liked, and he's relatively popular, historically speaking. At this late in his term, he's relatively popular. He's a relatively popular president because the social issues are, being liberal on social issues is a very popular thing. Even people who are Republicans or consider themselves conservative, a lot of those people are leaning towards marijuana legalization, leaning towards gay marriage, leaning towards women's rights on health issues and things like that.
Well, the future of the RNC is like libertarian for sure. I mean, even though Trump says so many stupid things and he's big business, he's definitely not big government. He's probably, if he's more liberal than anything, he's like a libertarian type. And that's the natural progression of that side of the party. It's like the left now is going into a different, I don't even know, man. It's a different thing they're doing now. They're protecting like a corporate global power structure that would absolutely gut this country and turn it into something horrible.
Yeah, and to me, it stems from this image that is given to Obama, where it's like he's like this awesome, progressive, tolerant kind of crusader type who's out there fighting for all these rights of oppressed people. But the news that you don't hear about Obama is that he's bombing 8 to 10 different countries right now. He dropped 26,000 bombs last year alone. We've got troops and bases in countries all over the world. I mean, we're bombing and drone bombing places like crazy all over the place. But, and even the Doctors Without Borders hospital and that stuff that happened earlier in the year, it's like Obama gets a pass on all that stuff, and the stuff that gets recognized is all the positive stuff that he's done on social issues, which, like I said, is stuff that people already pretty much agree on.
And Nick, the rules of engagement are ridiculous. I mean, wherever in history, for a humanitarian reason, which they've copped to, is it okay to preemptively hit a hospital because there's terrorists inside instead of using small arms and men to flush them out so that the innocents inside at least have a chance to escape? Instead, bringing the whole structure down on all of these innocent people, including newborns, by the way, which is like the worst freaking thing you can ever think of doing. And there's no way you can excuse it for humanitarian reasons. Because why? Because that saves them the indignity of being maybe possibly caught in a firefight and maybe they could get out. I mean, and our special forces want to go in. This is why Obama, honestly, if you really read any of the real military press, the stuff online that's not like the Times of the militaries or these fluff pieces, they despise the commander-in-chief's policies because we're not playing to our strengths. We're not the good guys anymore. We're like letting these things up in the sky just be a button be pushed and people die instantly, and there's no way to find out who's good and bad. And we're doing it the absolute worst way you can do it.
Yeah, dude, and my final touch on this Meryl Streep thing, Hollywood thing, it's I support these celebrities keeping our politicians accountable. But what I don't support is them covering up for other politicians and the horrible things that they're doing. And that's why it's hypocritical. I mean, here's what we need in the United States, and I guess probably people need this all over the world, is people need principled politics, where they have a reason to be for or against something, and they stick with it. And on the Trump end of the spectrum, his people. I mean, we've posted about how he's bullshitted everybody and said he was going to get Mexico to pay for this wall, and now we're paying for this wall. And we're posting about it on our pages and stuff, and people are like defending Donald Trump. It's like, look, you can vote for a guy because you think and you thought that he was going to do what you thought should be done, but when he screws you over, you should not take it in the you-know-what and just say, well, that's just how it... No, dude, you need to have some principles here. That's why we're having problems, because nobody holds their own party up to the standard that they hold the other party. You know what I mean? It's like Meryl Streep is against violence, political violence, as long as it's not being done by a Democrat.
Yeah, as long as it's their status quo they're enforcing.
Exactly. If it's being done by a Republican, it's bad. But if it's a Democrat, well, then I'm just going to pretend it's not happening. That's not how this is supposed to work. That's how the political establishment wants it to work. But what we need is people to have principles and actually be genuinely standing up for them. Otherwise, we're just going to be back and forth and back and Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton and then the next Democrat, the next Republican, and then it's a continuing cycle of like, oh, my guys are good, and then those guys are bad, and then it reverses itself every 4 or 8 years. It's ridiculous.
It makes me think like we do that back and forth, and that way neither the left or the right ever have a leg to stand on, because it's a constant cycle of hypocrisy for both sides. And meanwhile, regular people are truly in the middle, and more they're just on the logical side of live and let live and get out of my business, government, protect me, and that's all I ask. And instead, when neither side has a leg to stand on, we end up doing the splits, right? And then, falling on our nuts, and that hurts. So that's kind of where we're standing now. We're constantly in this splits, and we have to stand up. I mean, there is no two sides. There's just people, man. People essentially have a consensus of what's right and wrong, and we're not allowed to follow that because to the government that the profit is there when they're doing things that are horrible, right?
Right.
War, drugs, corruption, horrible trafficking rings, things of that nature are the most profitable. Why? Because very few people are willing to do those things because they're absolutely morally reprehensible, and there's no way to defend yourself except to be a criminal. And a criminal that can protect himself with other criminals is a mafia. And what we have now is a global mafia. And whatever it takes and whatever we have to do as a society here, because we have the most powerful military, the military is the only way to get the mafia out of all of the power structures around the world. And it has to start and end here. See, if the people here just allow the government to steamroll them, then that's it for the rest of the world. Once we fall, they have no chance at all. Look what happened. Even in China, with that many people, their government just can control them. So we're like really the last time where we can be free, and we have to fight if we see this stuff turning to fascism. Even people that voted for Trump, if he starts going back on his word and doesn't actually drain the swamp and start trials and clear house and start doing the things he said, then they need to start putting pressure on him. He needs to be booted. There's plenty of people that could theoretically be in the Republican Party like Tulsi Gabbard that could do the job right now and do it way better. It doesn't have to be Pence. And if the people just turned and decided they didn't want it and we were all unified, what are they going to do about it?
Yeah, man. What if just a lot of headwinds right now. And, people just need to be aware of it. We talked briefly about Bitcoin in our last show, and we're going to be getting some more guests on to talk about Bitcoin, because that's a very interesting thing that I think people should be aware of when it comes to kind of getting around the current monopoly on things. And the thing that is so important here is I think, in my opinion, not building some kind of massive political movement or anything like that, but figuring out ways to slowly but surely make some of these institutions irrelevant. And that's the way to, I think, slowly make the world a better place without hedging on some kind of political hero or political, figurehead to come along and say, hey, I'm Donald Trump and I'm going to build a huge ass wall and I'm going to give you guys so many jobs that each one of you going to have to work 3 jobs. No, like, we don't really need that. I think we need more community oriented solutions or alternatives to the current power structure. And that's why we were talking about Bitcoin in the last show, because it does offer an alternative to this kind of Federal Reserve-based central banking system here in the United States, and the dollar and the currencies and all the other central banks around the world. Bitcoin, it's a global currency that is ungovernable, basically, decentralized. It's everything that central banks aren't. And so it is an interesting thing. The price, again, keep in mind the price is still fluctuating, went down from our last show. But it's just something to keep an eye on. That being said, we are being joined tonight by Austin Casso, who does a lot of community gardening work and is helping to be part of the solution, part of the decentralizing of the food supply and bringing it back into the places where it needs to be, where it's most valued. Austin, how are you doing tonight?
Hi, Nick. Thank you so much for having me on tonight. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Just dealing with all these ridiculous things with politics going on and trying to make sense of it all, and it's just so convoluted at this point that it's just hard to keep track of. But we're doing our best. But tell us about what you're doing, man, because you're working with solutions. You've got a project going called the Tower Farms campaign, right?
Yes, that is correct. And the whole idea behind that is right now we're doing a fundraiser to crowdfund an urban farming center to be located in Lafayette, Indiana. And what we're going to do here is just, have a vertical indoor farm, salad and juice bar. We're going to integrate public education programs with local institutions like Purdue Extension, which belongs to Purdue University. Their local food program will be involved. And we're also going to, integrate entrepreneurship as well, like Shark Tank kind of setup, where revenue from the farm will help provide grants to local food entrepreneurs or even local farm-to-school programs. So there's a whole variety of things that we can do with this urban farming center as a nonprofit structure. And we are a 501c3, so that is, confirmed. Essentially, that is our goal.
That sounds pretty cool, man. So you're helping out the community, bringing food back, and then kind of any money that's coming in generated from the farm is going to be put back into the community to help kind of like spur food innovation, right? Basically.
Yeah, exactly. You couldn't put it any better. And, it's funny. I think back to high school when this started as just a dream, because I had this experience on my cousin's farm in North Carolina, and they had a small organic farm, a few cows at the time, about 100 chickens, pond of fish, and a huge vegetable garden, which had a huge variety of fruits and veggies that, were all organic. So that experience, really left a mark on me, because I came back to New York. I grew up in New York. And I came back to New York, and I realized what we were missing in our community, and we weren't fueling ourselves right. We were moving away from agriculture, and I just wanted to know how to get back into it, because that experience on my cousin's farm, was so inspiring to me, and I was so healthy. I was healthier than I had ever been in my life working on their farm, but I knew that the trends as they were, people aren't going to go back to that kind of farming. However, we do have the ability to grow food indoors, which a lot of people now realize that it's, because it's easier, and because of, the variety of benefits that come from it, it's more people are going back into growing food. And I remember in high school, I told my economics teacher, I was like, hey, we're going to have to go back to, 80% of the population involved with agriculture at least, or, something. And he's like, that'll never happen, and right now we're watching it happen before our eyes. So that's exciting to me. And I just want to be there as an organization for all the new, people coming into this industry, because it's a struggle, and I've been struggling for the last 3 years. Believe me, it's not easy, because it's it's an expensive startup. There's a lot of complicated things involved, and you have to have the right people involved, and to get a whole community behind something, it just takes time, and it takes building relationships with people. But
So, how would anybody listening tonight find your fundraiser and support your project?
they could go to either our website, which is redgiantunion.org, or they could go to our direct fundraiser link, which is a barn raiser. It's called barnraiser.us/tower-farms-campaign. And I know that's a mouthful, but we'll probably post it online.
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll share it on the Anti-Media Facebook page shortly after the show, so that everybody can, if you want to find it and support it, that would be great. So Austin, I wanted to ask you, a couple questions, because, I'm under the belief that that our society needs to be, that decentralization should kind of be the underlying principle to building a free society. Because as we've seen in multiple cases, whether we want to talk about corporate or government cases, where over-centralizing of something becomes an issue. So in the case with what you're doing, what we're dealing with from, and as far as like the other movements, as far as supporting independent food, community gardens, farmers markets, people generally trying to eat healthier and stuff like that. It's kind of a reaction to this hyper centralized, overly processed food system that we're dealing with in the United States. So, I mean, as far as why we should be supporting projects like yours, I mean, do you think that decentralizing the food system is important, like politically, as it is just generally to help people get like better food and more access? I mean, are these two things kind of connected? Because I feel like they are. But I mean, what have you seen?
Yeah, I agree 100%. Agriculture finds its way into all corners of civilization, and allows us to empower people through food, essentially through eating healthier food. And it's such a simple way to bring communities together, and it creates such a powerful impact on so many levels because, one, we're facing climate change, we're facing food and water insecurity globally. All these things we need to address politically. On a grassroots level, though, that'll never happen if the people aren't addressing it themselves, because why would we depend on our political leaders to look out for things that we're not looking out for,
Exactly. And on the flip side, it's like if we're already looking out for ourselves, why do we even need political leaders to look out for us?
Right. And there's that too.
Yeah, and that's kind of the way I see it, because I think we've given this experiment with having a couple of politicians tell everybody else what to do. I mean, this is an experiment that's been ongoing for several thousand years with results that have been pretty bad. And in my opinion, man, I mean, I think that something like food sovereignty, basically, and food independence is a underlying factor to freedom. Like building community gardens, community food, urban farming, and food like self-reliance, it's something that really helps us guarantee our own freedom. Because if we're reliant on a hyper-centralized food system where everybody's got to go to Walmart to buy food that's been shipped from 1,000 miles away or from different countries.
Well, what happens if EBT goes down? Like that's real.
Yeah. And the food stamp systems and the social safety nets in the US are underfunded and over leveraged. They spend too much. There's not enough funding coming in. They can hardly even take care of the people that are already on the benefits. I mean, to me, moving the food back into the urban areas, and maybe, like you said, Austin, we're not going to get people to go back out and live on farms. That's just not going to happen. But what we can bring the farms to the people in the form of urban farming, vertical farming, and things similar to what you're doing over there with your project. I just think that this is a way to help us guarantee our freedom, help us gain our independence, because being self-reliant and independent at a community level just gives a community so much more autonomy to do what they want to do. And that, to me, is the thing that we should be embracing throughout, not only here in the U.S. and in the West, but all over the world. The idea of decentralizing and self-reliance, autonomy for communities of people, this is the way forward, I think, because as we were talking about throughout the earlier part of the show, part of the big problem in this country is that there's so many groups of people telling other people what to do. Republicans and Democrats, everybody's now being forced to pay for Donald Trump's wall. We need to start thinking back to the community level and stop telling everyone else what to do and start working, I think, at the community level. And that's why I'm so excited that there's people out there like you, Austin, doing, getting this kind of stuff done. So we're going to post a fundraiser. Anything else you want to say? We only got about a minute left.
Yeah, I just want to say I'm really excited as to how far we've come in the last 3 years. We started really small, and now we've got over, 1,000 people involved with our campaign, and we've raised over almost $4,000 already in just a few days. So we want to keep it going, and we want everyone to know that, they can make a difference with even just $1 donation.
Awesome, dude. Awesome project.
And one last thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Growing our own food gives us our health and our minds. It also removes the more capitalist nature of food production, which helps us on so many levels.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks for calling in. We're going to post your info up on the Anti-Media Facebook page. And we're going to be back Wednesday. We've got some big news on Mexico coming out Wednesday. We're going to have a special guest on to talk about that. Thank you all for tuning in. Anti-Media Radio. Peace out.
Peace.
I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo.